Identify as a pre-op transsexual.
Right.
At the moment now I'm waiting for the gender reassignment operation. That will be in the next 12 months or so. But no, it doesn't faze me one little bit if I get called he, mate, whatever. Because I just take things as they are.
It's not important, is it?
Not important, you know. I am who I am. You know, if someone wants to call me mate, that's fine. You know, I haven't got a problem with it. Live and let live.
Yeah. And with the process, so you pre-op, you say pre-op. After the operation, after all that, do you go further and say you're a woman, or you settle with transsexual?
After I have the operation, I'll be a woman, and my past will be all buried. The male side of it won't even surface.
So you'll be just looking to the future?
Look in the future, yeah.
And what about you, Lauren? What do you identify as?
I prefer the term transgender, but you find a lot of people these days, what Jenny was touching on, would prefer this terminology coming into play. People are saying that they are women with transsexualism and describing the condition like we are women with a condition rather than being labelled by the condition. Like rather than being called a schizophrenic, you're someone with schizophrenia. I think there's a move towards simply identifying yourself in that gender, but you are a person who has either a history of transsexualism, depending on where you are on the overall scheme of things, or you're a person with transsexualism until you finally decide that you don't have it anymore because you've reached that stage where your gender is compliant with your physical situation. I'm just quite comfortable with transgender's nice, and I sit nicely under transgender. I think somewhere in the middle, because it like pre-op kind of tells people what's down between your legs, and you know, I prefer to leave that as a surprise.
All right. Well, when did you actually start to feel different, or when did you to have those sort of feelings that didn't quite match what was expected of you? Early days? Or?
About Thursday of last week, I think, wasn't it?
That soon?
I thought it was Wednesday.
Yeah. Most transsexual, transgender people will take it way back before puberty. Yep. It's even pre-sexuality. It's 4 or 5. You start thinking. It's like saying, when did you realise you were right-handed? And well, that kind of happened when as soon as I picked up a pen. Well, it's with transsexuality, you kind of think, well, it happens. I remember stealing mum's lipsticks when I was 4, so, and hiding them, and dare say she found them at some stage and took them back. But you kind of, it just happens very, very early.
And when did you? So I mean, there are instances like they were pinching the lipstick, that sort of stuff. But when did you actually think, I want to become a woman, or I want to change?
Well, for me, it was a realisation that there was an alternative. I just, you know, you grow up being told this is not right, you can't wear a dress, you can't do that, that's not what little boys do, and you're not a little girl. And so it gets drummed into you, get all the guilt and everything else pushed into you, until, like, I didn't realise there was an option. So it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I'd been to a lay girls thing and realised that there was a genuine option, and that's when you start to explore. I was just too dumb when I was young to know that there was it was possible to be the...
Or just too pressured by
you
the one that you can't.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I thought you said can't. I just didn't know that, that was possible. What about you?
Jenny?
I first started off much the same as Lauren when I was about 5 or 6 or something. So it always starts off from the members of the clubs. They always say around about 5 to 10 years old that it all starts off, and you grow up and you realise that something is different, but you can't put your point.
You can put your finger on it.
Yeah,
it's
as well.
Not on television.
And you realise that, you know, well, am I gay? No, I don't like men. But you know there's something different, and you just keep on going along, trying to find, you know, what you are. And then just like Lauren, around about the 20-25 mark, I realised, okay, so I like to wear women's clothes. You know, a little bit of research, a little bit here, and then you come across clubs like Seahorse Victoria, etc., and then you realise, you know, this is what you are going
And there
through.
are others.
Yeah.
Like it.
There is others.
That's right, and there are thousands. And you realise it's an identity thing. It's not just a thing about clothing. It's an identity thing. You've always expressed or had a female identity inside, and just kind of work out how to express it.
And did you have any incidences or any really bad experiences? What are typical experiences you might have when you're going through the initial sort of thoughts and feelings?
You could terribly depressed. I mean, the world is telling you, certainly in my late teens, apart from the bullying, because I was a bit effeminate, there was, you get all sorts of, like, pressures from the world saying, this is not what you're supposed to be like, you know, there's your stereotypical, you're supposed to be like this. And the world kind of tries to pressure you to fit into a box. I dare say the gay and lesbian experience is very similar. We get tried to push us into a box, and you get depressed, and so many of our people suicide because they just can't cope, and they don't realise that the support groups and other things out there to help.
A lot of them just sit at home and they're all dressed up, and they just say, what do I do now? You know? And they just go into a depression, and then they have a few drinks, and that next thing they cut the wrist, jump off West Coast Bridge, something like that, and it doesn't even make the news these days.
And is that mainly in the people like that who have those sort of feelings, or is it because they don't know or not aware of the various groups and support? And
To a large extent.
Because they think that they are the only ones in the world like this. But they might see drag queens on the TV or something else, and say, oh no, I can't handle this. And they don't realise that there's many support groups out there, and there's thousands of us.
Yeah, the internet's changed that a lot, because there is a lot more information. If you can get past the porno, there's a lot more other information out there that you can access. But even then, after you've learnt and realised who you are, that presents its problems in itself, as it would for gay and lesbian people, like coming out to family and friends. And
well, I was going to ask, we know about internal homophobia. Is there a similar term?
Internal transphobia,
Transphobia.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. People simply can't cope with being who they are, and the ramifications of it, if you like. If so many people lose their families because their previous partner can't cope with it, and can't cope with being seen in public with you because you know, you've obviously changed. Oh, but I'm not a lesbian, and all of this sort of thing, and it just gets way out of control.
And like internal homophobia, it doesn't come from within. It's the influences from outside, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the hatred that you have,
That's right.
It's because of everyone else telling you that you shouldn't be.
Exactly,
who you are.
and you realise you can't live identifying as a female, but you can't live as a male anymore. And that's when you follow Jenny off the bridge.
But it's not like
Soft landing.
as long as you find a group, but we'll talk about the groups and the organisations later. But what about, and often people confuse sexuality and gender and say that they're either causal or they are quite separate. There might be a link, but they are very separate
that's right.
things,
Well,
aren't they?
it's the assumption. I mean, the assumption that everyone makes of a transgender person going through, and I speak as a male to female, at school, is that because you're so effeminate, well, you're obviously gay. And when we're certainly lobbed in together in that category, but there is also that thing. I mean, while they're not, the causation is not the same, the effects can be. I mean, if I'm attracted to women and have a female partner, then at some stage I'm going to be a lesbian. Or if I'm attracted to men, at some stage I'm going to be gay. At some stage in your life, you have to be part of this community.
And some people, I often hear people have the perception that male to female transgenders are lesbian. People think that that's more common than.
Yeah, I don't know what's most. Well, there's a lot of both. There seems to be a lot of people are attracted to females, and I know some who have gone away and had long-term relationships with men, and there are a lot who are bisexual, Vic.
All right. Yeah.
Who kind of who fit in the middle ground. Once you've done the gender thing, you've kind of been in both camps. It's
and that's like in the queer community, in the wider community, bisexuality is a lot more common than people think.
Absolutely, yes.
It's very underestimated.
Yes.
We'll be back in a sec. So you're watching Face to Face, and we'll be back straight after this short break. Welcome back to Face to Face. I'm Vic Perri, and tonight we're talking about transgender issues. And my special guests tonight, Jenny Phillips and Lauren Christopher. And you are from certain organisations, which we'll cover later on. But at the moment, we're talking about the issues that people are going through. And let's talk about the actual process. So what's the process involved? We talked about the feelings and experiences that you've had and that make you think you want to change something. So what do you actually have to go through? Because there is a legal process, isn't it, apart from the medical process? It's quite involved.
There's pretty much a standard of care that you're expected to pretty much follow in order to get all the way through, which fundamentally starts with a visit to the doctor, who one would hope knows a little bit about this, because so many of our people have had to educate the medical profession because they just don't.
But
it involves the, I mean, probably as a first issue, you would start on hormones. And that's whether you're a male to female transsexual or female to male transsexual. You'd start on hormones, which starts changing your physical characteristics. For the guys, there's a couple of my transsexual male friends look just like you. They start developing male pattern baldness.
After or before the
and the beard, and they develop facial hair, and their voices drop within 3 or 4 months. Things start to really.
So basically, the testosterone's increased.
Yes.
And the estrogen's decreased.
Yeah, that's right.
The outcome.
And anecdotally, I believe they go through a form of puberty and get really randy. But that's I've only I've heard that reported a lot, but I don't know how exactly they deal with it. But for the guys, the physical changes happen really quite quickly, whereas for the girls, it's the hormones take a long time to work. It can
Why
take.
is that?
I don't know. Just unlucky, I guess.
So even though you want to achieve something with this therapy, is it a bit sort of, does it create a bit of anxiety when things like the hair growth and they actually do happen?
Oh no. No. Breast growth, because we tend to develop breasts, and the body fat moves from your beer gut down to your barge bottom. But no, did you
feel, oh no,
stressed?
this isn't really what I wanted, because
it's more like, oh
you
great,
prepared for it, or
no?
When you first, well, personally speaking, when I first started on the HRT, the first 6-12 months or so, there was depression, anxiety, and believe it or not, once every month I was feeling very, very depressed.
You kind of get a version of PMT.
Just like PMT.
Which is interesting.
And it always happened around about the same date each month. The first couple of times it happened, I couldn't work out what the hell's going on. That was all bloody new to me. And then I was like, this is it. And then
do you worry about the end? Do you worry, oh, but what if I go through the whole thing and then people just won't accept me, or I'll hate it? Or do you worry?
Well,
or are you determined?
You've got to go through the process with the gender program, and that takes about 2 years. And in that 2 years, you see psychologists, psychiatrists, a full range of different people, and you've got to get it in your own mind, how far you're going to go down that track. Because once you cross over that line, they can't get super glue and put it back on. No. It's gone. It's gone. And that's what they've got to be prepared to find out, and you've got to ask yourself deep down inside, which way do you want to go?
But that's why you have a 2-year process. You live in that gender and spend 2 years in that gender, working and living and getting on with your life. Obviously you've come out to all your friends and family and dealt with all of the issues associated with that, whether you lose them or whatever. But if you can tolerate 2 years living in that gender and managing your day-to-day, that's when the gender clinic will pretty much say, well, you're probably okay, you're probably right to go. But they certainly don't want to authorise surgery because, as Jenny says, it's irreversible. There's not really any going back. So the whole idea is to try and get on with your life and just move on.
Hopefully it is what you want.
And the surgery is not the be-all and end-all. It's not necessarily, it's an identity thing. You simply want to be accepted as someone of that gender. The surgery just kind of dots the I and crosses the T. It just finishes the job. Some people never bother about it because there are certain uses for a vagina, and if you don't have one of those uses, well, you're probably no point having one because they're still a high maintenance thing. I don't want to go into the gory detail,
yeah,
but there are things that you need to do to your vagina to keep it. I don't want to use the word so. I don't want to use the word so it doesn't heal over, but you need to keep it dilated so that it continues to operate and function, and all gets better.
I mean, obviously, you're describing, as I've said before, it's a very complex and involved process. Isn't it?
Absolutely,
So
and
it's not something that a person can think lightly of and think, oh, I'd like to be a woman or a man. It's not that simple.
A lot of the new members come along thinking, oh, yeah, I'd love to be a woman. But then you say, oh, you've got to be on the program, you've got to live like a woman for 2... Oh, no, I can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
So they're just in the fantasy world until they get down to reality. And as Lauren said, live your life, and do everything as your chosen gender. It just doesn't happen.
And what about, because we're talking about male to female, what about female to male? Apart from the obvious difference, what other differences are there, or is it similar?
Well, there's a swings and roundabouts thing with the female, with the guys we call them. They're fortunate in that once they start on testosterone, the effects are fairly quick, and they can assimilate into society as men, and they look the part. Fully clothed, they tend to develop facial hair, and like I said, some of them are lucky enough to go bald and are quite proud of it. And they just look like men. We tend to, apart from Jenny, the rest of us are quite tall, and we're kind of stuck with this. You tend to stand out more as a male to female, so they can slip into society quietly. And they say that the prevalence is about 50-50, but you don't see too many of the guys because they can get on with their lives. But on the other side, the surgery for the guys is very underdeveloped. It's very hard. It's much easier to dig a hole than to build a pole.
Right.
And it's very difficult to develop a penis that'll work.
Actually, there has been a couple of cases, haven't they, that weren't successful?
Oh, there's a number of them that they had a lot of health issues associated with the guys, the female to male transsexuals, where they leak and they don't quite work properly. The only way to really get a decent sort of penis is to elect them at a federal election. I'm sorry, am I allowed to say that?
No.
But what about the legal issues then? I mean, how difficult, birth certificate and all those sort of things, that must be another whole area.
Well, there's a number of things you can change right now. When you start your transition, your 2-year period, you can change things like driver's license and to a certain extent passports and Medicare and your bank records and that sort of thing, but they won't change. A lot of them don't have gender on it. So you can change your name and everything else, but birth certificates is where you need to change your gender. And in Victoria at the moment we can't change gender on birth certificates. We're working towards that, and I dare say it'll be a reality in the not too distant future, but all the other states in Australia you can change the birth certificate on your original documentation. So we're working on that.
What about overseas? What countries? Do transgenders fare better here than overseas, or is it?
Victoria's a bit behind, but the UK has a problem at the moment. They can't yet, but they're looking at it, as is Ireland. But most European, I think there's one in Europe, Andorra or something. It's a small cosy little chalet somewhere where you can't change your birth certificate. But I think most of Europe allows you to change your birth certificate and get on with your life. So I mean, the Middle East is still an issue. But that was always going to be one. It's if you don't get beheaded, doing all right.
Cultural and religious
that's
issues.
Right. That's right.
But
in terms of the Western world, it's getting better.
And now let's talk about your organisations, because you do belong to I suppose we should call them support groups, because that's the main aim of the groups, aren't they? To support people in their choices. So what group do you belong to?
I'm basically with Seahorse Victoria. I've been involved with them since '95. I've been on the executive committee ever since. I'm still on there, touch wood. What else? I'm in charge of the Masquerade Ball, which happens every year.
Yep.
And I'm also with AVP, Anti-Violence Project, as well. And Lauren's just wrote me into Transgender Victoria.
Right, that's another group.
You're not roped into it. Seahorses is basically a social and support group where people can go for 28 years. In 1975 it was set up, because things were kind of ugly in 1975. It was set up to provide a safe and comfortable space where you could express your gender issues without worrying about the police or idiots or anything else, just simply where you could chill out and be yourself. And it's kind of grown over 28 years to be quite a strong organisation.
And your group?
Transgender Victoria was set up in 1999 to try and work with the government for the equal opportunity legislation, so that you couldn't discriminate on the basis of gender identity. So, but we all work very closely together.
Like we all do,
Yeah,
in a way. So if people want to get in touch with your groups, how do they get in touch?
We're in the we're both in the phone book, but Transgender Victoria, which is more of education, support and political lobbying, is 9517 6613, and Seahorse is... See, she wrote down a hand.
That's all right.
Hey, I'm involved with the club. Why do I need to ring up and inquire about
Okay,
it?
the number?
9513 8222.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming in, girls. It was
Pleasure.
really interesting. And you're watching Ben TV, and this is Face to Face, and I'm Vic Perri, and we'll see you next time. Bye.